Welcome back to the Anti-Meta Club. This week we had not only one big glitch that kind of changed the way the race was supposed to be, there was also a really late change to the race implemented by PD, so it kind of changed everything, including the anti-meta, but it didn't change the meta. Let's get into it. The anti-meta car of the week is the Corvette, finally, American muscle at Road Atlanta. The Corvette sadly does not have very good tire wear, but that's kind of null and void considering the fact that there's a required pit stop, it doesn't take very long to take tires, and most people are anyways. It also doesn't have the fastest raw speed. Some people were able to get it actually in the top 10, shout out to Mumu. However, it doesn't need that raw pace because it has enough power that it can pass pretty much anything on that last straight, and that's super important for this race. I am sadly a little bit off pace this week, so I was only able to get a 16.5, which only put me at 115, and that was actually a whole day ago. It's probably a lot higher now and will only get higher throughout the week. A few other people, like I mentioned, were able to get it really close to the top 10 or actually in the top 10, so the pace is there, you just gotta find it. Hopefully we can find some of my mistakes during the lap and then you can do even better than I did. A lot of times we use the end of the grass as a good place to brake for Group 3, but we're gonna take it a step further. Go as wide as you can while keeping your right tires over the white line, and as soon as you get on the pavement past the grass, that's when you hit the brakes. Downshift to fourth and turn in before the next bit of grass, and then try to make sure that you hit this apex before fully getting on that throttle. Be gentle with the throttle and try not to steer too much because you can induce understeer and go off the track. Continue steering trying to get to the middle of the track, and when your nose gets to the end of this barrier here on the left, that's when you want to switch directions, still staying in full throttle. What I want you to do is aim so your left tires go directly on the curb at the very beginning of the curb right here. Once your car gets all the way onto it, then you're going to hit the brakes, staying on the curb and tracing the line of the curb. Full brakes, third gear, and when you get all the way past this white line right here, you're going to trail brake in and aim to hit this curb so your left tires are at least over the outside portion of the curb. If you can get your left tires beyond that, you'll actually be able to get on the throttle a little bit earlier, but I wasn't able to aim good enough. When I turned in here, I turned in a bit too early, and I still needed to lift off to get the best exit, but since I was on the grass, it actually caused a little bit of understeer. That caused me to have to lift off because I was too far away from the left right here. Had I done it correctly and stayed off the grass, I would have been able to lift, then get fully on the throttle and still navigated myself all the way to the left side of the track at the beginning of the curb right there. Since I didn't, you'll notice that I had to lift right here, and I also went over that curb, which caused me to slide out, and I lost even more time. If you've seen any of my Road Atlanta videos, then you know I take a really crazy line here. Approach the curb so both of your front tires hit the curb, but both of your left tires align with the straight portion of the curb. Once both left tires are on the curb, you're going to brake, but you're going to brake gently and you're going to steer lightly. Dip to third gear and try to hit the exit curb in the same way that you hit the entrance curb. Keep in mind the track limits on the exit are the black line that separates the two separate colors of the curb. How there's a normal curb and then there's kind of a thicker curb beyond that. That is the line you want to use, but you've got to get back on the tarmac before the beginning of the white line. In this view, you can see that you have almost all of the car in the grass. The reason that I like to do this and the reason that it works so well is that the tires on the curb have more grip, so that side of the car slows down more efficiently and you can see it rotating into the corner just like that. With that said, I could have turned in earlier and carried more speed through it because I didn't even go all the way up on the curb with my left tires here. As you move over to the left side of the track, I want you to look for this break in the wall after the billboard, and it's after that you can see this sneaky little 300-foot board here on the left. When you get all the way past it, when your tail is past it, that's when you want to hit the brakes. Start turning in third gear as you pass that white line. Make sure you don't lose too much speed so you can coast for just a brief second before getting fully on the throttle. You want to make sure that you get on that throttle late enough that you don't go all the way off the track here. Keep your eyes out for this first crack in the road. It comes out pretty quick. When your tail end is all the way past that, then you want to hit the brakes. Following the inside of the tire marks, you want to make sure that you drop down to first gear if you think you're going to go beyond it, but if you don't have to go to first gear, if you're good enough with the brake, you can probably get away with staying in second gear. Make sure that you don't allow the car to slide and you use all of the exit curbing on purpose. Since you're going so slow and since this straight is so long, if you slide at all coming out of that corner, if you use that inside curb and make the car bounce before you get on the throttle, it's going to have a really big effect at how fast you can go, and that's going to have a huge effect on your time. Going deep into this braking zone just after the 200-foot board is where you want to hit the brakes. Staying heavily on the brakes once you get all the way past the beginning of the curb. In third gear you want to start turning in, but continue decelerating down to second gear before popping it back up to third gear. Follow the tire marks that you see, lift off the throttle, and be very careful as you get back on the throttle. It's very easy to slide up here, and any kind of slide, again, will either slow you down too much or send you entirely off the track. Continue turning over the crest until you can see that curb on the left, touch it a little bit, turn in late, and then hit the exit. The Corvette doesn't actually have great brakes, but for whatever reason, probably the specific speed it's going at this speed, you can dive really late and carry a lot of speed through T1. It understeers on throttle here, so be very careful you turn in early enough. It's actually better to go on the grass a little bit, and the way I hit that was not ideal. You can actually go around that curb, and it should set you up for a better angle for the rest of this. I probably lost at least a tenth by hitting it like that. As crazy as this lawnmower line seems, it's actually not quite crazy enough. I should have gone more on the grass on the left-hander and then way out more when I was tracking out for the exit. I think you can probably brake a little bit later here and carry more speed through here, getting on the throttle slightly later but carrying more average speed, and I don't think you necessarily need first gear here. It just helped me rotate the car. If you're like me, you can get really distracted on long-ish straights, so I'm glad that this is kind of an unstraight. It's not exactly just a straight line and there's some undulations. It's also a really pretty track, so hopefully you don't get distracted like I have many times and forget what you're doing. Not that I did that on the previous lap or anything. Going up the hill for this right-hander, after this left-hander right here, the car is unsettled quite a bit during the left and right transition, so be very careful as you apply the throttle. Be very careful to notice if it's understeering or oversteering. Just be extra careful. And of course you can stay full throttle to the very end. So I've unfortunately had one of those days where it's become incredibly difficult for me to just get a single clean race. So rather than show one clean race example, we're going to talk about the strategy before I show you a little bit of how you can overtake the BMWs. First and foremost, since pretty much everyone is taking tires, what you want to think about is a tire window rather than a specific lap that you want to pit on. Since you can no longer do a no stop, the one stop is required. What you want to do is decide the maximum amount of time that you want to be on the tires for a single stint. It's not unreasonable to stay on the same tires for even 9 laps out of this 13-lap race, which means that you can pit any time between 4 and 9. We'll come back to that in a second, but I wanted to show that here you can see I'm taking the exact same line that I take in the time trial in the race. Both the dirty air and the extra fuel weight don't seem to affect the Corvette nearly as much as other cars that I've tested out today. You can also see that I took a really weird line because I was overtaking that guy on the inside, and I still came out of that corner even faster than he did. I mentioned before that I wasn't able to drive the Corvette quite as fast as some of the other cars. I got a .360 with the Genesis, and I also got a .3, I can't remember with which other car. I actually got a bunch of cars down to .4, but I could only get a .5 with the Corvette. You can see that I'm actually catching that BMW despite the fact that he had a lot of slipstream from the other BMWs. So if we can catch the meta car even when it's in the slip on the straight, then you know it's going to be a good option. And of course, since that straight is going to be an issue pretty much every single lap, it's really important to choose a car that's really strong there. So that's why I really chose this car as the anti-meta. Going back to the pit strategy discussion, the main thing is that you want to go in the pits when no one else is in front of you, and of course if you can somehow predict it when no one else is going to be right behind you either. This is a pretty good example of why you don't want people directly in front of you. He's not going quite as fast as I was. I ended up having a lot better pace, and even though he was really clean, you can see that it cost us a lot of time since we were battling through a really important sector. Shout out to him though, he gave me space throughout the entire thing and he kept it really clean. I really enjoyed that battle there. Either way, as you can see from that Lexus behind us, we're losing a lot of time by battling there, and that's just what you want to avoid. Even if you guys have really similar pace, you're probably going to have to go for an attack at some point, or they're going to defend or make mistakes, and so you just don't want people in front of you. Even if you are slightly faster than the person ahead, it's going to be really hard to pass because dirty air does really affect Group 3 cars still. If you can stay close to the straight, you could potentially pull off a move. However, if there's someone behind you, you could fall victim to that move. So again, the best thing to do is go into the pits when no one else around you is going into the pits. And of course, it's impossible to control when people behind you are going to go in the pits, especially with this super weird pit, but you got to do what you got to do. I also want to take this chance to discuss late moves when it comes to defense. A lot of people will try to move their car in front of you to block your way, and some people do it so late they don't realize you're already next to them, and this can happen. It's ridiculous trying to block someone with your car, making it so you run into the back of them. If you do that in real life, you are not going to be racing for very long, either because you've crashed out or because you're getting fired. And of course, when you do it in the game, it's just going to ruin everyone's race. I've got damage that affects you for over 30 seconds, I believe. And on top of that, it also wears the tires out even more, and it completely ruined his race. Don't make late defensive moves. It's silly. The pit itself here is also just kind of a disaster. This is probably the hardest pit entrance in the entire game. What you want to do is aim far to the right. In fact, you actually want to put your right tires on the grass. If you see this line right here, it looks like you're cutting that line, but it doesn't actually matter if you cut the inside. It only matters if you cut the outside yellow line when it comes to entering the pits. So, err on the side of caution. Hitting the grass will also get you to rotate the car, and then you've got to be really aggressive going into here, of course, without hitting the walls, because that'll ruin everything for you. For the last example, I really want to show you exactly what you need to do if you accidentally go over the line when you're trying to enter the pits. Going over the line is going to cost you 3 seconds, no matter what. So if you accidentally go over that line, you've got to abort immediately and just get back on that racing line. Of course, be careful to make sure that there's no one who's actually on the racing line, anyone who is right behind you as you try to go in there, but it's going to save you a lot of time versus just serving that penalty, and you can always go in the pits on the next lap. Hopefully, you'll have tires left. Once again, I'd like to thank you very much for watching my video. If you like what you saw, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And always a big shout out to all of my members. Thank you guys for joining. I appreciate the heck out of you. Thank you.